Butker trying to line this up. Winchester will snap it. Colquitt will hold it. .2020 tie, high snap, pulled down. Butker's kick is up, and it's right down the boulevard! It's good! And the Chiefs take a 23-20 lead with 4 seconds left in regulation. And Harrison Butker kicks some, you know what? Welcome to the Chiefs Kingdom!
Hi, how's it going, Chiefs Kingdom? You're listening to the Arrowheads Abroad Podcast with myself, Tom Childs, filling in for Brad Simcox again. And joining me tonight to talk over a fairly convincing win by the Chiefs is Dave Barnett. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, mate. It's Monday. I just want it to be Sunday again because the week's boring now. Like, unless the Chiefs are playing in the week, it's just boring. I just want the weekends to be here.
It is, like, people say you shouldn't wish your life away, but I do it quite a lot during the months of September through to January.
Yeah, I mean, like, Sundays can go on forever, but all the other days, bar maybe Saturday, can go really fast. That's fine with me.
Yeah, yesterday actually went, or seemed like it took forever. Like, the late kickoff, I know it's annoying for you guys in Kansas City. It's a 3:05 kickoff for you guys, but for us it's 9:05 in the evening.
Hey, that just means more tailgating time, to be fair.
That's true. That's very true. That's supposed to them, but for us, like, it's such a long time to sit around and wait for the game to start. I know you've got the 3 hours of red zone before,
yeah,
but you're just sitting there itching for the Chiefs game to start. And yesterday there was such a buzz about this game because it was the Raiders. They were hyped up for it. They had come off a good win on Monday night. The Chiefs obviously went into Jacksonville and took care of business there. Everyone was interested to see how Derek Carr and his offense were going to play after being quite convincing against the Broncos. Obviously, everyone was looking forward to seeing how the Chiefs would deal with the new revamped Raiders defense. And we're going into the first quarter, and we're all sitting there thinking, "Oh shit, this might be a trap game."
Yeah, it's one of those. Obviously, the Chiefs' offense is usually fast starting. It's the first time we haven't scored in the first quarter in 20-something games or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, so obviously it's quite a surprise to not see that. I mean, technically we scored on the first play of the second quarter, so like it was basically nearly there. But yeah, the Raiders did a nice job early on, sort of pressing the Chiefs receivers at the line, not really allowing us to get the quick passing game going and get into a rhythm. And so, yeah, obviously just making adjustments. And I think, obviously, it's what Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Mike Kafka, the QB coach, do a really good job of. We sort of saw it in the AFC Championship game, being held, what was it? I can't remember, in the first half against the Pats. Was it scoreless, wasn't it, at half time? And then coming out in the second half and looking unstoppable. And I say it looked similar here. First quarter a little bit sluggish, and then just came out, made the adjustments. Because what's the one thing you can do when DBs start pressing at your line? Go over the top of them, and the Chiefs did it with a ridiculous amount of success in the second quarter.
Well, we'll shelve that for a second because the second quarter is really all we need to talk about. But I don't want to spend 20 minutes talking about a quarter. There were other quarters of football played in this game.
Yeah.
And with the start, I'm not going to lie, I was worried because all week we'd heard reports about Mahomes, his ankle. We'd seen videos of him practicing, and we've heard people saying that doesn't look right, he doesn't look right. We come out and he doesn't look right in the first couple of drives. Obviously, we had the Eric Fisher injury to deal with. He was injured on Friday afternoon. He tried to go, managed 4 snaps, and then Cam Irving comes in, and Cam Irving coming in just reeks of chaos and disaster.
Especially at left tackle.
Exactly. There's a reason why he got moved from tackle to inside, because he has been a disaster at that position since he come into the league. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh God, here we go. And I even tweeted out that Pat looked off, and it just did, and nothing seemed right. And I feel so stupid now looking back at what I sent out as a tweet, because obviously what happened in the second quarter did happen, but it wasn't all hunky-dory. Like, Tyrell Williams was causing us grief. Josh Jacobs looked quite good. Like, the Raiders were playing well, and it did look like it was going to be a storyline game for them. Their last game in the Oakland Coliseum against the Chiefs, it looked like they were going to tie the all-time series. It looked like they were going to be leading the division, because I really did think the Raiders were just going to keep on pounding the rock against us and keep it all up. But luckily, the second half did happen, and what a way to kick off. Second quarter did happen.
The second half didn't happen as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, very true. What a way to kick it off with Patrick Mahomes, the very first pass of the second quarter, hitting DeMarcus Robinson on a go or a post, and it just basically causing the most magnificent 15 minutes of football we'll ever see.
Yeah, it's just pretty explosive, and just making adjustments. It's what they do so well. And yeah, as I say, the Chiefs' offense is so good. It is a case of, you can contain them, but at some point, Mahomes and the receivers are gonna get their plays. They're gonna get their opportunities. There's just too much talent on that offense to hold them for 4 quarters. And I say it's a case of damage limitation, I think, for the majority of teams when they're playing the Chiefs. And I say, I honestly didn't expect for it to explode like it did in the second quarter, especially as 3 touchdowns came inside the last, what was it, like 5 minutes or something like that, which is pretty nuts. The last 2 touchdowns were about 30 seconds apart on the game clock itself. So yeah, it just shows how high powered this offense is, even without Tyreek Hill. It's not a one man show; it's next man up. Watkins I think obviously the Raiders focused on Watkins a little bit, and guys like D-Rob, obviously we saw Hardman get more involved. Kelsey obviously is always involved, because it doesn't matter who you put on Kelsey, whether it's Perfect or Gary and Conley or whatever. They just had no success, which just kind of shows how much of a freak he is. I just remember at one point he ran like a crosser against the middle of the field and is outrunning a cornerback. It's just like throwing the fact,
do that.
Yeah, and then throwing the fact that he's that much bigger and that much, stronger than, the DBs as well. It's like, seriously, how are you supposed to defend a guy like that? It's just impossible. So yeah, and then obviously you throw in Mahomes, who's, what regression? It's absolutely nuts.
For the Chiefs to have the success they did in the second quarter, it obviously involved that. Then it meant for it to happen, rather, they needed to get the ball back quickly. And I'm sitting here looking at the breakdowns of the second quarter. The Chiefs ran a 3-play drive with 72 yards of touchdown. Then the Raiders a 4-play drive of 21 yards, which only lasted 2 minutes. The Chiefs then got pinned back at their own 14-play touchdown drive, 95 yards. Then the Raiders went 3 and out, then touchdown. The Raiders went 3 and out, then touchdown. The defense certainly played their part in what was a significant second quarter.
Yeah, for sure. Again, so similar to the offense, made some adjustments. I think just kind of a bit sluggish coming out of out at the start. I don't know whether it's the being on the West Coast, the slight time difference, whatever. You sometimes see it with teams when they're traveling across time zones and stuff. And playing in the later windows when they don't normally, it can have that kind of effect. But I say, it's at the end of the day, once they made their adjustments, they definitely seem to be generating a lot more pressure as well. on Sunday. Don't forget this Raiders O-line stopped that Broncos D-line from generating any sort of serious pass rush. The Monday night before. So yeah, I think that's a credit to the Chiefs D-line for getting in Carr's face and making him uncomfortable. And I know the DBs have been much maligned. In KC the last, probably all preseason and last week as well. But I thought for the majority of the game on Sunday, the DBs played really, really well.
There'll be tougher times ahead for them, I am sure.
Yeah.
The Raiders and the Jaguars aren't exactly the most loaded teams when it comes to wide receivers, but they can only beat who's in front of them. And yes, I think you have to tip your hat to Bashar Breeland, to Kendall Fuller and Travis Ward, the way they held up. One Thornhill was very good. He was flying about. Tyrann Mathieu had a bit of a brain fart at one point, but outside of that, he was very good. The one defensive player that really stood out to me, though, was Chris Jones. He was a one-man wrecking crew.
Yeah.
It just seemed like, although he wasn't necessarily getting the tackles, he only had 3 tackles, 1 tackle for loss and a sack. It just looked like he was disrupting the Raiders' game plan from the very beginning. Whether it meant Derek Carr couldn't step up into throws, or whether they the running back had to avoid the gap that he was meant to be running in, or Chris Jones filled it. I don't know what it was, but it just seemed that Chris Jones was constantly having an effect on every single play.
Yeah, he looked back to his disruptive best. I think he's, he'll have quite a game. I don't think he's going to have the run of sacks like he did last year. That was historic, record setting and historic. But he's always going to be disrupted. I think, at times he was against Jacksonville. It wasn't his best game, but I think they paid a lot of attention to him, and teams probably will pay a lot of attention to him. But I say, when he gets his one-on-one matchups, that's when teams are gonna be made to pay for it. And he did a nice job of that on Sunday. And it's not just the sacks and the tackles as well. He does a really nice job of getting his hands up and disrupting passes at the line of scrimmage. So yeah, just a really nice game all around.
Right, should we talk about him? Should we talk about him at the moment?
I think we should. Yeah,
we talked about everyone else, but Patrick Mahomes,
he's pretty good, isn't he?
What else can we say about this kid? He's 24 years old. He turns 24 years old on Wednesday, I think it is.
Is it? Right. Okay.
And has the league, outside of Dan Marino in his rookie year, obviously, me and you were not even sperm at that point, not even an egg. At that point, not even I'm that old. And so obviously we weren't around to see how he played, but I hear he was pretty good.
He was supposedly pretty good. Yeah,
pretty good. But in our lifetime, certainly, have we ever seen anything like Patrick Mahomes? Yesterday in that second quarter, he threw for 278 yards and 4 touchdowns.
That's a stat line. That's a stat line that most QBs are happy with for an entire game.
If Alex Smith threw for 278 and 4 touchdowns, that would be one of his best games ever for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And Pat Mahomes did that in a quarter. The play that epitomised Pat Mahomes for me was the 3rd and 20. Mm-hmm. And they even said it on commentary that you wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs took a shot if they're aggressive. Tony Romo was saying that they maybe should just take a couple of yards to get into field goal range. Yeah, but it wouldn't surprise me if they went aggressive.
Yeah.
But no, Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, they know what they've got. They know how special an arm Pat Mahomes has got. They know they've got the speed on the outside and Mecole Hardman, and they just go for it. And lo and behold, they hit it. And I'm just sitting there thinking, how good is this guy? If you can just if you're that confident in your quarterback and his ability that you can go from 3rd and 20, knowing that if you don't get it, you're out of field goal range, doesn't that tell you all you need to know about the faith that Andy Reid has in his quarterback?
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's totally warranted at this point, because it's not just Mahomes though. I think a lot of credit has to go to Andy Reid.
Absolutely. He's in the best scheme possible.
Offensive, guru. The amount of times, Mahomes throws into tight windows and he makes, throws on the money. but the amount of times, you see guys open as well. D-Rob on his touchdown, there was a big crucial 3rd and 9 on one of the other touchdown drives where Sammy Watkins was, wide open in the middle of the field. It's just that, the combination of scheme and then, you throw in a quarterback like Mahomes as well. It's just the perfect combination. And, you said that with pretty much any QB that Reed has worked with. He's sort of managed to sort of get the best out of them. When he's had a really good quarterback, McNabb and obviously Vic for a short time, and now obviously Mahomes. The offenses have almost looked unstoppable at times, and they've been perennial MVP candidates. And then he even made guys like Kevin Coleman, was it AJ Feely as well, I think, at the Eagles, guys that basically went elsewhere, looked horrendous. So yeah, it's just a perfect storm of generational talent at QB and one of the greatest offensive coaches in NFL history. And yeah, it's especially you throw in the talent at wide receiver, and teams have just got dread having to try and think up of a defensive scheme to stop the Chiefs. Because even if you come up with something good to start off with, say like the Raiders did on Sunday, where they tried to press the Chiefs at the line, they tried to disrupt the passing game, it's just like they'll just come out and make adjustments. You see them after drives, you'll see Mahomes, Kafka, Reed just sat there talking on the sidelines, looking over the photos on the iPads of the all 22 angle, and just saying like, okay, this guy's here, that guy's there, that guy's there, and just dissecting it, and they'll come out and just pick the perfect play to take advantage of what the defense is showing them.
I don't disagree with anything you just said. I completely agree with absolutely everything, but there's some plays that have nothing to do with coaching, have nothing to do with scheme, and the one play I'm thinking of, or the two plays I'm thinking of, unfortunately were both called back for penalties. The one where Patrick Mahomes rolled right and threw across the field, which is like a sin in quarterback terms, but he has the power in his arm and the dart to DeMarcus Robinson, and that has nothing to do with coaching. That's all instinct and that's all ability. And then the other play was the deep shot to McCall Hardman, which was the touchdown that was
74-yard touchdown.
74-yard touchdown, 53 yards in the air whilst he's rolling right on his back foot.
Did he even have a foot planted, I think, when he threw it? I don't know. He might have been in the air, but it's just nuts.
That is just... I'm not a religious man, but in the terms of what a religious person would say, that is God-given ability. And I just don't think you can account for that when it comes to playing against a quarterback like him. And I'm sitting here now thinking, he's right. He's by far and away the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
At this present time, he is there's quarterbacks playing well, and there's quarterbacks that have played very well in the past, like your Rodgers, your Breezes. And at the moment, you've got Dax and Lamar Jackson playing well. Tom Brady's playing lights out at the moment, but again, you could argue scheme and whatnot and weapons there. But Tom Brady, I think we both agree, is the greatest of all time, but certainly not the greatest at the moment. But it got me thinking, like, in terms of sport in general, are we getting to the position, or are we soon to be in a position where Patrick Mahomes could be the biggest sports star, if not the biggest, certainly in the top 3 or 4 in the world, like in the next few years? Because at the moment, I would argue that the 4 biggest sports stars in the world, only one in US sports, and I would probably say that's LeBron James, and as a household name, then Roger Federer from tennis, and then Messi and Ronaldo from football.
I mean, I think you'd probably throw in Rafael Nadal and Djokovic,
I think,
as well, probably.
Djokovic, I would say more so on the outside looking in, because I don't think he carries the brand like the popularity like the other guys do in this conversation.
Maybe,
I feel like with tennis, not to go into it, I always feel like it's been Nadal and Federer, then you've had Djokovic and Murray looking in, although they're just as good in terms of ability.
I was going to say Djokovic is not far behind in Grand Slams as well either. But yeah,
think
I get what you mean.
In ability, absolutely fine. But as a market, as a brand, I just don't think Djokovic is there with Nadal and Federer, which makes them the biggest sports stars in the world. Well, in the next 5 years, you could argue that all 5 of those sports stars are going to retire.
Yeah, I know that. I think that's safe to say, probably.
Yeah. And football or soccer has not got an obvious heir to Messi and Ronaldo at the moment. There isn't a player coming up that you can certainly point to and go, they're going to be the next big.
I mean, you probably would have said the same about, I think, maybe Messi before he burst onto the scene. 2 or 3 years before he became the superstar that he was. Would you have said Messi will be the next superstar?
I think you could see with the likes of Ronaldo and Messi that they were expected to be the next big torchbearers of their clubs. Like, obviously before Barcelona it was Ronaldinho, but Messi was going to be the next big thing, and I think that was obvious, but I just don't see it in football at the moment. Basketball is a superstar driven league at the moment. There are tons of superstars, but the fact there's so many of them probably makes it harder for one to break out and be these big superstar. American football, we know, is growing globally as a sport. It is becoming huge outside the USA. Basketball's already done it. Ice hockey's already done it. Football and baseball have some serious catching up to do, but football is doing it. That is for sure. Yeah. And so at the moment, if you're going to say who's going to be the biggest star in the next 5 years in American football, you would say it's Patrick Mahomes. So there is a case to be made that Patrick Mahomes could quite easily be the top 3 biggest sports star in the world, and he's going to play for the Kansas City Chiefs. That to me is just surreal.
I will probably disagree with you. I certainly think he will be probably, if he carries on as it is now, the biggest name in the NFL, hands down. Especially if he wins a Super Bowl within the next couple of years as well. I don't think there'll be any debate on. Especially as soon as Brady retires as well. He is the heir apparent. But as I say, the only problem for me is I don't think football quite has the reach yet globally, like the other sports that you've mentioned. Even if there isn't quite a Messi or Ronaldo, transcendent talent, I still think the biggest couple of stars in world football, beat the biggest, even if it is a generational talent, if not one of the greatest all-time talents in the NFL. I just think that's just because of the what is it? It's something like 2.5-3 billion people watch the World Cup final.
Yeah. And,
what is it? Maybe, a quarter of that, if that, watch the Super Bowl every year. And I think that's and it's the same with basketball. Basketball is more of a global sport. I look at guys like Kawhi Leonard, Steph Curry to an extent, Giannis Antetokounmpo, especially Giannis obviously winning the MVP, and obviously Kawhi winning the NBA title last year. If then obviously Kawhi wins another NBA title and another Finals MVP with the Clippers this year, you'd have to throw him in the conversation for, one of the best players of his generation, and in the conversation for one of the greatest players. I don't see how he couldn't. I don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% sure on it, but I don't think any player has ever won NBA titles and the Finals MVP with 3 different teams. So, that would immediately just catapult him into one of the greatest. And yeah, if Giannis carries on, his sort of level and the way he's developed over the last few years, he'll be huge. And obviously he has that appeal within Europe as well. So, yeah, I think it'll be tough. I certainly think he'll be up there. But yeah, as I say, my only issue is I do not think the NFL has the global reach of some of the other sports that we've mentioned, but he will certainly give them a run for his money.
Which in itself is exciting. The fact that we can sit here and have this conversation is nuts. look at the position we've been in the past few years at the quarterback. Okay, Alex Smith was a great guy, and we won't go into him, but he wasn't a generational talent. We're sitting here now, we're talking about Mahomes possibly going back to back with MVPs the way he started this season, and now we're going even further ahead, looking at Super Bowl wins and possibly being the biggest sports star in the world. So just pinch yourself, Kansas City, because he is ours, and he's going to be ours for the next 10-15 years, all being well. So yeah, jokes on everyone else, I think, to be honest.
Well, jokes certainly on the rest of the AFC West, at least. Yeah.
Actually, just a quick going off a tangent, I was talking to a Jets fan of mine, a friend of mine, that he hates me because all of last summer, there's not the summer just gone, the summer before, I was saying Pat Mahomes is going to come in, he's going to tear his league apart, and he was like, no, he won't, and then he was secretly rooting for him not to do well last year, and then was distraught that he did do well last year. And yesterday, I think it was the rough in the passer call, which was definitely rough in the passer on the Raiders yesterday. He said, Mahomes is the new Brady, he's getting all of these calls, blah 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 blah. And I'm just sitting there thinking, you're just angry because you're one of the 10 teams that passed up on Patrick Mahomes.
So you must have missed the game against Jacksonville last week where he had his helmet basically ripped off his head and no flag was thrown. So he's certainly not at Brady levels of ref protection yet.
Don't get me wrong, like Jamal Adams was a nice pickup for the Jets in 2017, but it's not quite Patrick Mahomes, and I just think he's secretly angry that the Jets didn't do that, and now look at the mess the Jets are in. I
mean, you could basically say that of pretty much any team that isn't the Chiefs at this point, because, as I say, like, who wouldn't, outside of maybe 2 or 3 teams who wouldn't trade literally anyone for Patrick Mahomes at this point. It just wouldn't. The Patriots with Brady, they're obviously, you've got that, and you'd probably say the Packers with Rodgers, but elsewhere, like, where else would you possibly go? You know what, if we could have Mahomes on our team right now, would you do it? You'd 100% imagine they'd all be like, yes please, yes.
I'm just happy that Mahomes went to a team that was starved of quarterback success. Like, it was rumours now that the Saints were in for him.
I certainly think they were,
And like, how unfortunate would that have been? Like, for the rest of the league, for the Saints to go from Drew Brees to Pat Mahomes. Like, look at the Packers. They went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers.
It was like the Colts with Manning to Luck.
And it's just like, it's just unfair. Like,
I mean, the Pats went from Bledsoe to Brady, which that they've had a nice little run. It's not quite the same level, but still. And then you can even look at certain other teams that have had it much better than we've had it for, basically since Len Dawson. I know we've had, guys there for a few years at a time, with obviously Joe Montana, Trent Green and Alex Smith for a bit, but this is the first guy since Len Dawson who's the Chiefs guy that they've been able to will be able to have around the team for years to come, and will be the face of the franchise. You never quite got that with like Montana or Green or Alex Smith. You always knew when those guys came that it was just like, they'll help us be, they'll help us be competitive. They'll help us win a lot of games and potentially even win a championship. But then they're not quite that guy. That guy that you can look to and go, that's our guy. This obviously, since I've been supporting the Chiefs, I've never known this much hype around a Chiefs player and a Chiefs team. Like, for years, and you can attest to this as well. Like, being a Chiefs fan in the UK, it was a lonely thing. And now just, the media coverage, the hype, just random fans of other teams, like, gushing over the team and the coaching staff and the playing. It's just, if you'd have said that to me, 10 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. Absolutely laughed in your face.
It's funny you mention that, because there's been some comparisons to the the Golden State Warriors and all these great teams.
Yes.
Recently, all these great offenses, the 2007 Patriots, and then talking about the Golden State Warriors. Are we to the point where the Chiefs really are that transcendent on offense, that they are doing things that teams haven't done before, and like scoring quickly and in bunches, that they are revolutionising the way the game's played? Are we seeing the Mahomes effect across the league?
The only problem is, in the NFL, you still need a competent defense. I'm not saying you need the Bears defense.
Yeah,
you don't. You need a competent defense at worst. Whereas, say in the NBA with the Warriors, it doesn't matter if the Warriors keep hitting threes all night. It doesn't matter how good you are defensively. You can't compete because you have to be able to score with them. Whereas in the NFL, a average offense against a bad defense can keep in a game with a transcendent offense against a good or fantastic defense, and we saw that at times last year. And until the Chiefs don't need a top level defense. They don't need a top 5 defense. They just need a top 20 defense probably, and that would be enough with the way this Chiefs offense is rolling to win a Super Bowl.
One last thing on this game. Demarcus Robinson has been named by many people as the man, the match, the game MVP. And I cannot, for love nor money, get on board with that. Like, he played really well, and he filled in really nicely, done a job. He's going to lose me a dinner bet against Brad because he's already got half the yards required in 2 games. And with Tyreek Hill being out, I know that I'm going to lose that bet in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm absolutely fine with it. I want Demarcus Robinson to come in and do well. I'm really happy for the guy. But I cannot get on board with the overlooking of Patrick Mahomes. I feel like we are already... despite what we just talked about for the last 20 minutes, I do feel like he's almost been taken for granted. Like, are we going to get to the point where, another basketball reference, but like LeBron James only has like 3 or 4 MVPs, should probably have double that. Tom Brady only has 3 MVPs, should probably have double that. Are we going to get to the point now where, because Mahomes is so good and so good every week, that we feel like we have to give like game MVPs and game balls to other players just to make them feel good?
I think he's going to get held to a standard, and if he doesn't meet that standard or exceed it, then
278 and 4 touchdowns in the second quarter. Like, that second quarter was unlike anything I've ever seen.
I'm not disagreeing
with
you. I say personally, I'm not disagreeing with you, but when a receiver goes for a $140 and 2 touchdowns, that people see that because I guess in the scheme of things, it stands out more than Mahomes just doing that again.
Stands out more than 400.
I think the thing is, like,
McCoy doesn't hold on that play that we were talking about earlier to the deep bomb to McCole Hardman. Mahomes has over 500 yards passing yesterday.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but as I say, that's like, Robinson, who's never had a game like that in his career, whereas Mahomes has had better games than that, as crazy as it is. And that's the thing, is Mahomes is held to that standard, and it's just like, oh, that's Mahomes just doing Mahomes. Whereas people look at it going, oh, that's Robinson balling out and playing better than he ever has. This guy deserves it, kind of thing. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it happens. Like, look at the Player of the Month in the Premier League last month. It went to Pookie from Norwich, who. Sure, he scored, but did he play better than, other players in the Premier League that month? I don't think so. It's just that, well, do you give it to Aguero again, who scored more goals last month than Pookie did, in a team that scored a ridiculous amount of goals that month, or do you give it to the guy that definitely probably won't win that again and has never won anything like that before? Yeah, you probably do. And that it happens all the time. You see it elsewhere in sports. It does happen, and
but that's
I
giving
think
it
that's
to the
probably
best.
why.
That's giving the award to the best of a bad bunch, which I'm okay with. Norwich Pookie was the best player on the Norwich City team, but DeMarcus Robinson isn't the best player on Patrick Mahomes. And I know what we're debating here is absolutely ridiculous. It's such a non-factor, and I'm sure the players don't give two shits about it. But what I'm sitting here thinking is what does Mahomes have to do to get the credit that he deserves a man in the match? Like, if he's going to throw for 500 yards, the chances are there's going to be a 200-yard receiver in that group because of how many yards are being thrown around. Like, what I just don't know the stat line right now that Mahomes needs to have to get for people to go, whoa, that was out of this world. Like, does it need to be 500 yards? Does it need to be 600 yards? Does it have to be 5-6 touchdowns? I just don't know where it sits, and I don't feel like he's been around long enough yet for us to take him for granted, not to give him the kudos that he deserves to win these these game balls. And I'm going to state it's absolute rubbish what I'm talking about right now. But it just occurred to me this morning that everyone's sitting there going, "Oh, D-Rob was the best player on the field yesterday." No way was he the best player on the field. The best player on the field was clearly number 15.
Yeah, and I say I don't disagree with you. It's just the perception, and that's the difference. It's the perception of, okay, this guy doesn't ball out like this normally. You know, let's give him the MVP, and that's the only thing it is. It's not a case of did that guy genuinely play better? I don't think so. It's just that guy wasn't expected to play that well, and still had a ridiculous game. He gets it. That's all it is, and that's all. You know,
better than his own standard. Played above.
Yeah,
himself.
you know, if Tyreek Hill has that game yesterday, and Mahomes has the game he has yesterday, I think there's a chance Mahomes probably wins the game MVP. But as I say, it's DeMarcus Robinson, not Tyreek Hill, and I think that's why it's played into the way it has.
Pat Mahomes will continue to get players recognition. He did it with Albert Wilson. He got Albert Wilson an $8 million a year contract just for one performance in Week 17. And he's going to get DeMarcus Robinson quite a healthy amount of money over the next few weeks because he is in a contract year. And as
I wouldn't be surprised to see, especially if Watkins goes, I wouldn't be surprised to see D-Rob stick around next year just because he won't be as expensive, anywhere as close to as expensive as Watkins would be next year. So you can still free up a bit of cap space and keep a guy that's familiar with Mahomes around. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him stick around.
Sammy Watkins, who obviously had a great week last week. Six receptions and 12 targets for 49 yards yesterday. I think, or 13 targets rather. The Raiders clearly keyed in on him to try and stop him, and then obviously the Chiefs done what they done. But that's not to say Sammy Watkins didn't have
he made some really crucial catches. I thought, there was one on a third down when we were backed up. On the 4-yard line on one of the touchdown drives, and then the one I mentioned earlier on that 3rd and 9 where he made the right decision to sit in the middle of the field rather than continuing his route, made an easy completion for Mahomes. So yeah, it's going to happen. Like, it's just because of how this Chiefs offense rolls. There's going to be a guy that gets keyed on, and someone else will step up. Like Watkins did against the Jags, Robinson did against the Raiders, and I'm sure it'll be a similar case against the Ravens on Sunday. Somebody else will step up.
That they will. They're going to need to, because that's going to be a tough game. But we'll be back on Thursday, obviously, to preview that game. Just one last thing before we go, because we've been going a little bit longer than expected. The rest of the AFC West teams, the Broncos lost in dramatic fashion, as did the Chargers. Actually, the Chargers they really charged that game. That there is no way in hell that they should have lost that game. They were in position multiple times to win it and to put it to bed, but
two missed field goals
is going to kill you. And Phillip Rivers throwing not the best INT at the end of the game. 2
TDs brought back for penalties.
Fumble at the goal line. The Chargers really, really did outcharge themselves. The Chiefs have got to go to Detroit in 2 weeks' time, and I don't think they're going to have the issues that the Chargers did. The Chargers, we thought they were going to be a good team. They probably still will be a good team, but there's something not right there, and I think their ceiling probably is a wild card spot right now. Yeah,
I say Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson are a nice combo, but they're not Melvin Gordon. And I say I I'm not as sold on their defense without Derwin James. I think they're susceptible to a big play downfield without him. And Kenny Golladay had a big day yesterday for the Lions. I think he used 8 receptions for about 115 yards and a TD. So yeah, I definitely think you can get in behind that Chargers defense, and obviously with the weapons and the speed the Chiefs have, I think they'll cause the Chargers plenty of problems. And I think the Broncos just look bad. The only reason they're in that game yesterday is because the Bears' offense just looked as bad.
To be fair to the Broncos, they had that game won. There was a horrendous roughing the passer call on Bradley Chubb towards the end of the game when the Bears were trying to drive down to put themselves into field goal range. It was just a plain old sack. It's like it's up there with the Jeff Triplett call. It was terrible.
Yeah, but I mean, earlier in the game, there was a horrible, unnecessary roughness call on Floyd for the Bears that put the Broncos in field goal range. Mm-hmm. So, I know it stands out more because it was obviously right at the end of the game, but it balances itself out, I guess, if you look at it that way. Yeah, their offense looks bad. It looks really bad. And in the NFL now, even compared to like 5 years ago, offenses reign supreme. Like I say, you can have a very good defense, but you need at least a decent offense to carry them. You can't be like the Broncos of a few years back anymore, because the rules, even in a few years, have changed a little bit more to even push it more towards the offensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Suddenly, road trips to Denver and Chicago don't look as daunting as they once were. But Chicago,
not if the Bears' offense is as turgid as that. I mean, I was looking at the stats, and Mitch Trubisky yesterday, 4.8 yards per attempt. He's god awful. Mm-hmm. Absolutely awful.
Rex Grossman part 2. Anyways,
and they drafted him over Mahomes.
Yeah, they probably have got the biggest regret of that entire draft class.
Well, yeah, Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. You passed on both of them. You've got to be kicking yourself if you're a Bears fan.
Absolutely. Right, let's tie it up here because it's only 3 days until we speak again. Thank you for joining me tonight, Dave. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun talking about Mahomes and how great he's going to be for the next few years.
Can we? I hope Brad will be back on Thursday, because I feel like I'm talking a lot, and a lot of people are going to be listening to this podcast. I'm like, does this guy ever show up?
They've already turned off, mate.
Yeah, no, they're like 10 minutes in. It's like, fucking hell, it's him again, just talking. Get him off.
Well, hopefully Brad will be back soon. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, Brad hasn't left the podcast. He's just really busy. That's all it is. He's really, really busy. He's got all sorts of stuff going on at the moment, so unfortunately he can't join us. But me and Dave are going to soldier on.
Holding down the fort. We might even get a special guest on or two in the next week or two, maybe.
Don't make promises like that, guys. Now,
hey,
like under
leave
pressure.
The suspense.
Ooh. If you guys want to join in the conversation, please do hit us up on Facebook and Twitter, at Arrowheads Abroad on Facebook and at KCChiefs_UK on Twitter. But for now, we'll leave it at that. And from one kingdom to another, we'll speak to you again soon.